let's talk about our inventory and appraisement template. Inventory and appraisements are very common in family law and our divorce cases, and they're very important. And sometimes I think we underestimate how important they are. And at final trial, it becomes all too evident how important they are. So we want to give them the right attention at the beginning of the case. So when you get your inventory and appraisement form, the first thing you want to do is send a blank form to the client to complete with some instructions. And I always instruct my client to provide me with a piece of paper to support every number on the inventory. And again, this is from learning the hard way, that the clients would just make up numbers. They'd make up numbers, they'd guess, they'd misremember. So I'd end up with this inventory that made no sense. And it's embarrassing at trial if the other side says, "Where did you get that number?" You don't know, and the client can't remember. So I started building my inventories with a little bit more detail. I asked them to give me a piece of paper to support every number, and then I tab behind the inventory. I tab and attach that so the other side sees how I got every number. And it really forces you and the client to put some really good work into the inventory and end up with a really good product. So for example, on the inventory, if 1.1 is the real estate, then my tab 1.1 is going to be the tax appraisal, if that's the number I'm relying upon, or if I got an actual appraisal, so on and so forth. And you might have multiple pieces of paper to support that. So that's the best practice, definitely, and it will help you to not be confused later when you think, how do we get that number? And one thing I offer to clients is things like KBB for the Blue Book. For the cars, I offer that they can do that, or if they want our legal assistance to help them with that, we're happy to do that, because sometimes they get frustrated by the inventory and appraisement and they do not want to fill it out, or they fill out part of it and they just get frozen and they can't finish it. So we offer that the paralegal can help them. But typically the paralegal does not have full information about that vehicle. So the paralegal is going to need to have kind of an interview session with the client in order to help them with that type of research. But there's so much available on the internet now. You can look up the value of the cars, the boats, the motorcycles, trailers, all kinds of things with the Blue Book, and we just print that out, and that's our piece of paper to support our number. So that's a helpful way to get some information. Also, most people's accounts, whether it's checking account, savings account, brokerage accounts, 401ks, usually they can get something online live that day and print that out. So when the client says, "Oh, those statements go to the house," or "I don't get those statements," I always say, "Is there a way to get it online?" And that will help them. Now, it sounds simple to fill out the inventory and appraisement, but remember that the clients are not lawyers and they do not understand the difference between community property and separate property. So we need to be educating them and helping them to put things in the right categories, because we don't later want what looks like an admission that something that is separate property is community just because the client didn't know what portion to fill out. So we need to educate them and ask them, where did you get this asset? Did you own it before marriage? So on and so forth. And it's so common that we have assets that are mixed character. Either they're mixed character or maybe there's a reimbursement claim. And sometimes that isn't clear until a little bit more discovery has been done. So if your inventory is due before you've had a chance to fully discover that, what I recommend is that you put it both places and then put a little asterisk and say, a portion of this is likely community and a portion is separate, and we'll amend once we have further discovery. And then you haven't waived your claim. It doesn't look like your client used to think it was community and then changed their position when they got more involved in the litigation. So that's a way to preserve that and just protect yourself. Your client also doesn't know what a waste claim is or a reimbursement claim is. So we need to interview them enough that we understand if they have a waste claim or a reimbursement claim that needs to be included on the inventory. And always remember, and there's a template here or an action item here where we can remind ourselves to amend our INA right before mediation or trial. Of course, life goes on while we're helping these people get divorced, and that includes the stock market. So their assets are going to change in value. They're going to be spending them to live, to pay for us. they're going to be making money, the stock market's going to affect it, so the numbers are going to change. And I just ask my clients, just every time you get a statement, send it to me. But you don't want to constantly be updating this, right? We don't want every month our clients to have to pay for a new inventory. So it's smart to do it right before mediation, because you'll need those numbers, and right before trial, get an update. But we do owe a supplementation, and so does the other side, to each other 30 days before trial. So that's the time to do it. And then if there's any major change right before trial, it would make sense to do it again. Maybe a big bonus came in. Well, certainly we would want to have that bonus be before the court. So we'd want to update that. So you'll want to be aware of what's happening in your case. And if it's a collaborative case, you might not be doing a traditional inventory and appraisement, but you certainly are going to be doing some type of spreadsheeting so that you have a good idea of what the estate is, so that the parties know what they're dividing. And you'll want, if you have a neutral financial professional, to be sure that they're getting updated information. You know, the scary part sometimes of involving neutrals is we lose a little control, which lawyers being control freaks we don't like. But I do think we still bear the burden of making sure things are happening that should happen. And I think one thing to do is just to make sure that the financial professional is updating that spreadsheet, and that they are getting current numbers, especially in really complicated estates where there's a lot of information and a lot of assets. So I think just to remind yourself, and to have a little note in your template to update the financial professional to make sure they're getting updates, because it might not be coming through your office, it may be going directly to them. That would be important. And that is our template on inventory and appraisements.